Hey guys, this is George and Jake at EDC Leather. I'm the pretty one, that's why I'm up front. Today we're going to talk about putting together our click and ship, either the patterns or the full click and ship kit. We're going to do a Glock 48 today. So first of all, I've made a decision. I'm going to do a Glock 48 because I just got one. I think it's really cool. Everything starts with a pattern. This is a pattern for the Glock 48. We're going to be cutting this out in a few minutes with a pair of scissors. I want you to notice two things. Do you see this line right here, dashed line? And do you see it's repeated here? Then notice here where you see a dashed line. These are suggested trim outs from the click. And when I talk about a click, let me show you what I'm talking about. When we ship one to you, I'll show you how I make it. Come on back. All right, this is a piece of Herman Oak EDC holster prep. They actually make this exclusively for us. It's pulled out of the process right after dry, and then they re-wet it, they case it again, and then after they case it, they roll it through an oh my gosh roller with a mirror wheel under like 50 tons of pressure. This gives us a very dense leather, very smooth, no hair cell on it at all. But when you order a click and ship, it's just like it sounds. I'm going to click it out. So let me do this for you real quick here. I got some marks on this leather because I've been kicking it around the shop. I don't care that much because I'm going to dye this holster black. All right, so I'm going to come to here. Engage. We call it a click. More of a bang. I'm going to adjust that up just a little bit. This is the front panel right here. Front panel. And if you notice on the edge, it's actually already polished. Kind of cool, huh? And the throat reinforcement. Your use of a throat reinforcement is entirely up to you. I'm providing it for you. And it aids the holster, keeps it from collapsing. If you end up with your firearm out of the holster rolling on the ground, keeps the holster from collapsing, adds a little bit of strength to the throat. So, now I'm going to roll this leather up. I'm going to set it back here in my little side pile. This is our high-tech off-on machine. And you do the pool cue action and turn the pump off on the clicker. How cool is that? Let's get making. All right, guys, let's get to cutting. We have a pair of scissors for paper. We have a set of shears for leather. These don't cut paper. They're expensive, and paper is very abrasive. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want you to notice this line right here. This is the outside shape of the click. See that? Matches up. But the Glock 48 is a shorter barrel. So what we've done here is we have a line here for you to cut off that's going to position it correctly in the holster. So let's get after this puppy. When you get these patterns, they're going to come to you in a PDF format, and you can print them again and again on cardstock. We do have physical pattern packs that actually include the click. It's entirely up to you if you get them, but if you do, I really want to see you photocopy and keep those spares, because you see I'm going to destroy this pattern during this build. Can you save the pieces and use them again and again? You absolutely can. But paper gets a little fluffy on the edges after time. It's not as accurate as you may want it to be. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting out the back panel right now. You do want to be accurate on this because this is the outside edge of your holster that you'll be marking up. Now, here I've come to this trim outline, so I'm going to follow that dotted line with my shears, okay? I'm trying to cut down the center of the dotted line. When I put it on leather and I mark it up either with pencil, pen, scribe, whatever you want to do, we're going to cut to the inside of that line because our mark was on the outside, so we need to cut to the inside to be accurate. Now, in your shop, if you got a lot of, I know a lot of guys got a lot of things going on. You have dry times involved, times you're putting stuff away. So we do suggest, as we're putting this holster together, you cut off the legend and you tuck it down inside of the holster. That way you know what you're working on. So this is the outside of our holster, and we've trimmed it to the trim off line. So look at it here, fellas. When I lay this puppy onto here, I'm working on the back first, so I flip it over, and I match it up to the leather. You can see the trim out that we need to achieve here and here. This is really achieved pretty doggone easily. And we're going to mark this thing up here in just a second. All right, we can't take and line this up to the top anymore because we've shortened it down. So line it up on the ears of the holster. Now I can see my trim out marks. I'm going to take my scratch awl. And this here, you may not even really need to cut. You can take this and go over to your bench sander and sand to this line. Still achieving everything you need to do. So that there is get that. Now I'm going to come to the bottom. Alrighty. I'm going to grab my knife. I'm going to trim my bottom off straight. Not worrying about that curve yet. I'm actually going to sand that in during the build once I have the leather together. When I come to here, I believe we can cut this. Holster prep is pretty firm stuff, gang. And we just snip off around the corner as usual. But I do want to get that little bit off the top. Okay, ready for sand. That one's done. I can take the exact same pattern that I had because I'm lining up on the ears. See that? That's how I'm lining this thing up. Take my scratch awl. Once again, mark it. And I am not really going to worry about these curves at all until I've got it glued up. So now, this click and ship is ready for glue up, and it's going to fit a Glock 48. How cool is that? Now let's go to the next step, which is we're going to take and we need to mark our glue lines, okay, and then mark our stitch lines. So let's get that done. Once again, we use our paper shears on paper. We don't use our leather shears on paper. Because if I do, Garrett will hit me with one of his hammers. And I can tell you from experience, that hurts. Back around. Once again, remember I'm trying to cut in the middle of my dashed line. And then I'll mark, and then when I mark it up, I can glue. So there's my two wings. All right, we have one other piece we want to deal with. That would be our reinforcement panel. Note, we need to trim this thing down, right? So let's go ahead and cut it out. And we have to trim this down. I'm going to show you on this pattern. Looky here. This is the edge of the trigger guard right here, okay? This, the way it is, goes over that edge, okay? And it's really going to look horrible when that leather's trying to fold down. So we're going to pull it back from that edge a little bit. Can you do it? Yes. Will you regret it? Yes. Here I go now. I'm taking off onto the dotted line. And you'll find some of these are just little slight changes, and some of them will be pretty radical. And at this point, yeah, I'm tracing it out accurately, but when you have a click and ship, all I need is my reference line, which in this case is this vertical line here is my reference line. Watch what happens here. I match that up, and I get the top curve going. And do you see where I've got to trim off there? We're going to grab our leather shears. And I'm going to trim that little bit off. There you go, gang. And of course we can true that up with a little bit of sanding. So we know right now we got to glue that up. So let's go ahead and true this up here at the sander. So come on back to the sander. All right, gang, normally this is a sander that I use, but we're not going to be showing that because these are stupid expensive and they like to eat knuckles. Come on back, let me show you another way to do it. Harbor Freight is the leather worker's friend. Now, I want you to look at this belt right here. See how it's loaded up? And I think I sharpened a pencil with it last. And I don't want to get that on my leather. So this is gum rubber that you get at Harbor Freight, just made to clean these. Yep, I would say it's clean. So what I want to do is I want to trim this up right here with the sander. Not really putting any pressure on it. Just letting the sander do what the sander does. And I think with a coupon, you can get this for like $30, $40. We've had expensive belt sanders here, but they didn't seem to last any longer than the Harbor Freight. So now we've trued that up. Let's head back to the cut bench. Come on, gang. All right, gang, we're back. Let's glue. Now, before we glue this puppy up, I need to actually take this piece right here. The throat of the holster lines it up. You don't have to have the pattern at this point. Do you see how it only can go one way? So, let's take this puppy right here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to run an edger all the way around this, I'm going to run an edger just on the hair side. Okay, let's glue this up, and let's take a stitch it on, and then we'll put the rest of it together. How awesome is that? So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do another little cheater thing. Watch this here. See this pattern? I don't want it to go everywhere. Okay? So, I'm going to come in about 1/8 of an inch on the sides, but not the top. There. The top I keep exact. Coming down the sides of the bottom, I'm coming in about 1/8 of an inch. And you see, I'm not measuring it. You don't need to. What we're doing is we're going to create a little deal we can trace out that will let us put our glue on and keep it from squirting out the sides of our reinforcement panel when we do our glue up. But here, we stay down to there, so there. Check that out. But we kept the top accurate. And here's why we did that. When I set this onto here, it can only go one way, and it's matched to the holster. So now, I can trace around this. And that's smaller than the reinforcement panel. Thereby no glue gets anywhere. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to grab an edger. I'm going to grab an edger off a bench, and I'm going to grab a roughener. We're going to rough up the back, rough this area up here, and we're going to edge this, and then we're going to put her on there. All right, guys. We need to really pay attention here. We don't want to edge the rough side, okay, because that's going down. We want a good match. But we do want to edge this here because once it's on, it'll be hard to do. You can't edge that after it's already there. So let's just knock that out real quick. All right, gang, we're ready to do the edges now. Do a little promotion for Sarah. Sarah Hagel makes slicking solution. I call it horse spit. Pretty much the only thing that we use around the shop. We use this when we're doing an edge like that. We also use wax for waxed edges. All I want to do at this point, get a little bit on there. The cool thing about this is it is not a dye blocker. So I can slick this way, and then we can dye it, and it's all going to work great. Yay. Okay, I am not going to slick this here, the top of this, because we'll be putting those two together. I might want to sand a little bit, make sure it's all perfect. We're just going to slick the area that we won't be able to get to later on. Sarah Hagel Slicking Solution makes your edges 30% shinier. I've been listening to Lone Ranger, so 30%, get it? Pretty good there. Okay, got our edges slicked down. Let's get her lined up and glued up. All right, guys, let's glue up our reinforcement panel. We'll get ready to stitch it. But first things first, glue has a great place to stick here to the flesh side of the leather. Not so good here. So we're going to rough this up a little bit. It's a little Tandy roughing tool right here. And remember, we cut down our reinforcement panel, made it a little smaller, so we've got a little room to play with. That's all we got to do with that. Take a little bit of glue. People ask about glue. You know, there's a lot of people that made a great living using weldwood. We, pretty traditional. We use masters. Some people use barge. Any contact cement is going to make you happy. Come back here. Our glue, we almost never build one holster. We're building, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 200. We don't want to do that again for a while. So we heat our glue up with acetone. Shortens time, makes things work a little bit better for us. I don't always recommend that for everybody else. What I'm doing here, I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to just pull that glue a little bit, just like that. Rub it in your hands, don't worry about it, it'll stick. While this is tacking up, I'm going to take this piece of leather right here and I'm going to mark up my stitch lines. Remember we cut these apart? Well, the reason that we did that was to give us our glue lines and give us our stitch lines. Okay, so here, then I'm going to come back here a little bit and make a mark. This tells me where to lay my glue. Using the ear to line it up. How awesome is that? You can mark this with pencil, you can mark it with pen. It's inside of the holster. Who cares? We're not going to mark that other one up yet until we've got it all glued and set. So we're going to give it, it's going to take it about another 5 or 10 minutes to be ready to go. At this point you would be sanding other holsters, things of that nature. After we glue it up, we're going to beat the tar out of it with a hammer, and then we're going to stitch it. So right now we're going to disappear here for about 10 minutes and get this glue ready to stick up. Okay, my glue's tacked up nicely. I'm going to set, now remember we line this up using the holster itself. Notice I don't have to use the pattern to do this. Maybe I should. I'm old and confused. All I'm doing is getting her lined up. All right, there we got her down. Let's beat it. I know a lot of you guys are really familiar with various kinds of hammers and cobbler hammers. Might be some of the newer people that aren't as familiar. This is a convex shaped head, okay? And they're pretty smooth unless you get glue on them. Pretty much polished up. When you hit the leather and pound on it, it doesn't make marks. That's why you have a cobbler's hammer. All right, Let's get this thing over for stitch. We're going to mark our stitch line for this thing. We want to use 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to put this down here and let's look at our deal. When you get below your ruler, below an inch, you will find you have a bunch more lines. So that is an eighth, that is a quarter, that is 3/8, that's a half. We want 3/16, so between a quarter and 3/8, that's the line I want to match to. And you can see, there we go. We've got 3/16 of an inch on here. So now we're going to go ahead and mark our stitch line. Your stitching is going to fall into this slot and cover up your line. Then when you're wet molding, you can also rub it a little bit and true it up. Just chase it around. Notice I'm moving my project with my hand, not really moving the dividers. And I bring them to touch. So we got a nice little stitch line there. Let's go over and have Garrett stitch this up for us. All right, guys, we're going to stitch this now. We're going to use black thread because then we have a black holster. You can absolutely use brown thread on a black holster because when you dye it, guess what? It turns black. We're using 277 on top, 207 on the bottom, and a 3/16 inch stitch line. This is something to remember, guys. Is your bobbin full? It wasn't. So now what do? You pull the stitches out, put a fresh bobbin in, and off you go again. The stitcher will go right back in the same holes. So yes, it does happen. All right, gang, a few things that we need to do at this point here. If we look at our pattern, okay, on the front of the holster from here to here, the front of the holster is up against the back. That means that we can't edge this or do it. So we need to do this edging and polishing before we put the holster together. The next thing that we need to do is we've stitched it, it's all fine here, but looky here. See how the threads are kind of up? So we want to pound those down. And if you're just beating on it with when the leather is dry, you're not really achieving anything. So we're going to go ahead and wet this leather down just a little bit. So the leather's got a little bit of give and we can knock those stitches down. Doesn't take a whole lot, just a little bit. I'm going to put this right on top of this other piece of leather on the flesh side. When I've wet the leather, it lets me drive those stitches down into it, making it a smooth surface, less wear from the firearm going in and out of the holster. How cool is that? So now what we need to do is we're going to lay this thing right back on top of this pattern. And we're going to make a couple little marks on it to let us know where it's in front. So right here is where it takes off, okay? And then right here is where it joins back up, okay? So now, when I look at this, I can see that I need to do edges from here And then I'm going to look back at my reinforcement panel. I realize I need to come a little bit further to here. This is where I need to go ahead and edge. All right, so that means I also need to run my edger here. But folks, I need to do it here, which is really easy. Okay, I'm going to show you what I mean. Always easy to do the hair side of leather. Okay, not so easy to do the flesh side. Folks, I've seen guys complaining, you know, when they're, especially some belt makers, about not being able to do that. And let me show you something that's going to help you. Okay? Always wet down the leather on the flesh side before you run an edger. That's it. It's that simple. Let's let it case out for just a minute. Let that soak in, and you're going to find out that it edges a lot better. Now look at that. We're getting a nice edge. My edger is dull, I know. But once the holster's together, I can't get to that. So now I've done that. We're going to go hit the sander. We're going to hit this here a little bit with the sander. Then we're going to go ahead and edge this out. We're going to do this because this is my holster my way, which is we're going to do a wax edge here. You can do it on your drill press. We'll show you how later, not in this video here, because I'm hungry and I want to get this thing done. So let's head over to the sander first and true this up. All I'm dealing with is where the two pieces of leather come together. Just truing that up a little bit. And that's smooth. So let's go to the next phase. It's a line finish machine, and we've got everything done up with wax. Now guys, take a look at this here. This is canvas. You can see the canvas here. We wrapped and glued it to this bar. This bar is turning at 3,400 RPM. We want to generate heat and through friction in order to melt the wax and drive into the edge. This is what we call a wax-driven edge. If you come over here, this Shopsmith machine, which you can get off of the internets, okay, for between $100 and $300, will do over 3,000 RPM. When you combine that with a Harbor Freight sanding drum and you wax up canvas on it, you can do this exact same process on this machine. So this is the leather worker's friend. This thing, you can slow it down to 900 RPM for buffing. You can speed it up to 3,000 RPM for good wax edges. Your choice of what you get. But these, make sure you see it run. You're buying them used. They're from the 50s and 60s. So now we're together. Let's go over and get this holster glued up. All right, gang. I know some of you, especially some of the students, might ask you, George, why didn't you edge out the toe of the holster and go ahead and do that there? And that's because we do it together. Notice I've still not sanded down this yet. I'm going to sand it after it's together, all right? So at this point here, we've marked up the back for our glue. Let's mark up the front using the exact same pattern pieces because they have to go together. So let's do that. All right, let's lay these back onto our holster. Because this here is intended to be sanded out, I have to do all my aligning on this side and this top edge. No big deal, just keep that in mind when you're doing it, all right? We've got her there, so let's get ready to do our glue up. Little thing was coming after me. When gluing, always pull your glue to the edge. Just keep that in mind so you don't end up with glue on your edge. Okay, and then going in, I tap a little bit, and then I do a spread. When we're doing a large amount of holsters at a time, we'll actually go down and just squirt a dollop of glue on it. And we get these little yellow body putty spreaders from the commercial paint store. And they work great for spreading glue, but always work to your edge, okay? Just double checking my pattern where my glue is going to go to. It doesn't go to the top of the back panel, but it goes all the way to the top of the front panel. I have a firm belief that leather glue, especially Masters, does not hurt you. It actually makes you smarter. Okay? So Masters has a lion on the front. Okay? And lions on the Serengeti, when the wildebeest are there, he's going after the weakest wildebeest. Okay? So I really think that Masters just goes for your weakest brain cells, thereby thinning the herd out. And voila, you're a smarter person. Got rid of all those weak, tired brain cells. Pulling out to the edge. Okay, let's give her time to set up. We're going to put it together, beat the tar out of her, mark our stitch lines on the front, and stitch it up. Okay, and Jake's laughing because I set this holster down, but watch. That glue is tacked up. I can do that. Ha, Jake. I usually start at this point on one of the wings, and I want to get it just as close as I can. And I'm watching it all the way down that edge. I can still maneuver around a little bit. I can do all the fun stuff. Now I'm going to set my finger here in the middle, and I'm going to start to pull this edge in. If I get the edge right, the rest of it has to fall in the middle, and we're going to beat the tar out of it with a hammer. Good, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, let's give her a few taps to get her set. Just twisting the leather back and forth a little bit, get that edge lined the way I want it to. All right, looks there. So now I'm going to go do some sanding, but I don't know if you can get in close or if we can zoom in a little bit. You'll see just how nicely that clicked out lines up. Something to remember. All of our clicker dies are set as right hand. So that means where the die penetrates the leather from the hair side, it's always going to pyramid out a little bit. I don't buy left-handed dies. We make them, but not enough that I need to worry about. But it's going to pyramid the other way. So that means when you put your leather together, you're going to have a tiny little valley on a left-handed holster on the edges that you're going to need to sand out. But let's go ahead and hit our sanding on this thing here, and then we'll get her stitched. See, it doesn't really take very much, but looky down here where I want to get those edges shaped in and make sure this is together. So here's what I'm going to do. Very low pressure on the sander. Let the machine do the work. Watch yourself with your sander that you don't lean this way or that way. I'm a little bit off of true, so I've got to very carefully bring it back into place. One of the most amazing leather workers around, his name was George Hurst. He passed away recently. But he would always like to say, do this very carefully, and then he'd just take off and go nuts. All right, let's catch some edges here. All right, gang, we're back from doing our sanding. When I said about flesh side, it's always easier to edge bevel cased flesh. Okay? So we'll go ahead and do that there, but we're going to go ahead and run our edger around. Now we hit there. Okay, so now I've got this thing edged out. Got a nice profile. Let's put some stitch lines on it. All right, gang, something you're going to need to watch for is don't start your vertical stitch lines, okay, at the bottom. They're not going to be at the bottom. They're going to be up 3/16 of an inch. Also end there, okay? Now I'm going to take my divider that we just measured earlier. And my method is I move my project, not my divider. You do it with that, whatever works best for you. Okay, now let's lay our other line on. It's going to be a happy home for my little Glock 48. I don't know, unless one of you guys out there is a young holster maker. And if you want to, get a hold of me. And I'll do you a swap. So if you want to have that. Now, remember how I just told you, don't go over the edge. See, I did that? So now when Garrett's molding this, he's going to have to work the heck out of that with the molding spoon to make it go away, which I think is hilarious. We have one other job to do. We are not going to cut the belt slots, but we're going to mark them. And I will use a hammer slot punch to do so. And I don't use a hammer when I do that. I just lay it on there. And I give it a good mark. Come right back, right through the paper. Come right back on top. Do that. As we found out years ago, if we cut that slot, guys, the foot on the stitcher will fall through, and there will be much cursing and wailing and gnashing of teeth. Aha! And do that. This punch is made by Texas Custom Dies. I've actually left them a message. I think we're going to start carrying this punch on our site. It is designed for a gun belt. All right, we're ready for stitch. Let's send this puppy over to the stitcher. If you look at our website, so we started with a click and ship. We started with a pattern, okay, and then we had the clicks. When we put the click together and we stitched it up, at this point, this product is what we call a flat pack. You can actually buy the holsters built to this stage, leaving it for you to do your molding, dyeing, and finishing. This will speed you up, or if you're just beginning, it'll really allow you to see how things go together, maybe helping your confidence a little bit. It's a fantastic thing. So at this point, when you get this here, we're going to continue to wax edge the entire holster just like you saw. Okay, and all this, the edging, the dyeing, the molding, the finishing, we have another video for that on the channel, and I believe it's called Mold, Dye, and Finish of a Flat Pack Holster. So make sure you go there and take a look at that. And as Jake has reminded me, please like, subscribe, comment, and I guess the other thing is right after you watch this video, watch that Mold, Dye, and Finish, and somehow the staying on the channel helps out. So, guys, peace out. We love you much. Go make something.